So this 2017-2018 church year at UUI, we are experimenting with monthly worship themes, which means that each month there will be a theme that I'll organize worship services around loosely, not fanatically. And then there will be some other opportunities to do more exploration and to go deeper with it. For example, this month the theme is home and belonging. So next week we're going to have some special guests from the Kepra Institute to talk about the subject of gentrification, which is intimately tied to home and belonging. And we'll continue to explore different facets of these themes in our pub theology group, which meets on Wednesday, August 30th, if you're able to make it to that. So last week we kicked off the church year talking about a proposed 8th principle for Unitarian Universalism. You can find the text in your bulletin right underneath the 7 principles. But the 8th principle calls us to journey towards consciously creating a multicultural, anti-oppressive, beloved community. In one sense, the 8th principle is really asking the question, who belongs in Unitarian Universalism? And it answers everyone belongs here. That is to say, everyone who wants to make a home here should be able to make a home here. It envisions a community that is radically welcoming across culture and class and race and ethnicity and so on, all the usual categories that divide us in America. And in regards to which, truth be told, UU churches are not particularly diverse, with a handful of exceptions. And part of the journey towards creating that kind of community is examining ways in which we do or do not extend that welcome, consciously or unconsciously. Now, the presumption, of course, is that we do want to be welcoming. We could be an exclusive group that says we're done, we're good, we're happy with who's here, we don't need any more people to invite into this space. But we know that's not how we operate, right? Our doors are open every Sunday to anyone who wants to enter this space, and we also explicitly invite people to be a part of this community in a variety of ways. So we envision ourselves as a welcoming community. So since we're a religious community that aspires to be a welcoming community, we should start by asking, what are the religious values that ground this desire that we have? Well, to begin with, our first principle says that we affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each person. That's a very intellectual formulation. We affirm the inherent worth and dignity of each person. Simpler, we say we believe that each person is important. But that doesn't quite capture the spirit of our religious tradition, because Unitarian Universalism is in love with the human spirit. Simply put, Unitarian Universalism is in love with the human spirit. When Calvinism was painting gloomy pictures of human beings as being corrupted by sin, so much so that we had to go begging for a God somewhere who could be deigned to forgive us, William Ellery Channing, our great founder, said no to that. Human beings are glorious creations. In the language of his day and his theology, he said, we are made in the image of our Creator, and that is a glorious image. We can reason, we can love, we can create. We can choose the good and the beautiful. We can be kind and compassionate to one another. There is in each of us, at least potentially, something glorious that is waiting to be expressed. And so Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists have always been great celebrators of the human spirit and of human potential, which means we're also very upbeat about people. Because after all, that's where we find the human spirit. We find it in actual people. Imperfect, wonderful, challenging people who come across our path. And second of all, we believe theologically, religiously, that we need one another. We need one another, of course, for comfort and support, because life is hard and challenging. We need one another for mutual encouragement. We need a shoulder to cry on. We certainly benefit from the knowledge that we share and the connections that we make. But on a deeper level, on a spiritual level, we believe that we can only become fully human in relationship with others. We can only become fully human in relationship with others. And so our proposed 8th principle speaks of journeying towards spiritual wholeness, which is a recognition that when we are isolated from one another, When we are fragmented and separated as a society, then we are not spiritually whole, either as individuals or as a society. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we must recognize that because of our deep interdependence, I cannot be free until you are free. And of course, there are many contemporary and historical forces that seek to keep us isolated and segregated across race and class and all of these other categories. There are many forces that seek to keep us all unfree, and so we come together to seek to burst through those forces and find our freedom together. And third of all, we believe religiously that we have something important to share. When we welcome people into Unitarian Universalism, when we welcome people into this community, we are welcoming them into something powerful and life-changing. Our third and fourth principles promote acceptance of one another, encouragement to spiritual growth, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. This is a place where we covenant every week to seek the truth in a spirit of love and mutual support. And so we conceive of this community as a place of radical acceptance that supports the free mind and the open heart and the search for truth. It's a learning community. As our board president, David Jackaway, likes to say, this is a place where you can change your mind without having to change your church. And the experience of a religious community, of a spiritual community that values and supports and encourages questioning and doubt and disbelief and also belief in a non-judgmental way, in an open way, in a loving way, that can be life-changing for people to experience that. Two things that you hear very often at a Unitarian Universalist church, including this one, is, I had no idea a religion like this was possible or that a place like this existed. And the other thing that you hear is, I wish I had known about this earlier. So this is a story that I've told a few times, but it's appropriate here, so I will tell it again. It's a story that I heard Bill Breeden tell a couple of years ago. And Bill Breeden was a longtime minister at UU Bloomington, Reverend Bill Breeden. And he had quite a reputation as like a free thinker and a peacenik and a general rabble-rouser. He likes to brag that he was the only person who was arrested for the Iran-Contra scandal, which is a story for a different time. But anyway, Reverend Breeden had quite a reputation, and as you can imagine, UU Bloomington had quite a reputation as well. And one day he was out and about, and he ran into an older woman who he recognized as a member of a local church of a fundamentalist variety. And she recognized him as well, and she said, "You're the minister of that UU church." And he said, "I am." And she said, "I know your church. I pray for your church every day." And he put on a neutral face as best he could, and he said, "Well, ma'am, thank you. We'll take all the prayers we can get." And she said, "I don't think that you understand what I'm saying." She said, "My son is gay, and the church that he grew up in rejected him and told him that he had no home there, but your church welcomed him in with open arms, and it saved his life. So I pray for your church every day in gratitude." So just the act of welcoming can be a powerful act. It can be a healing act. The experience of a religious community that invites people to bring their authentic self into community, to be themselves with the promise that it will be seen and nurtured and valued. The promise that you will be loved for who you are can be a life-altering experience, and it can be a life-saving experience. Now, I'm not saying, of course, that everyone would or should want to be a part of Unitarian Universalism. I'm not arguing for the superiority of this religion, but I am saying that we don't always fully appreciate that we have something really important to share here. We have a healing, life-saving religious tradition that frees us, that supports us, that calls us to be our best self and challenges us to bring that self in service to the world. We have a religious tradition that teaches kindness and compassion, that challenges injustice and oppression, and seeks to promote love and peace in ourselves and the world. That is the tradition that we are welcoming people into when we welcome them into this place and into Unitarian Universalism. And for some people, this is exactly the church, and this is exactly the invitation that they have been waiting for, often without even knowing that something like this is possible. So it matters that we welcome people. It is religiously and spiritually important that we are a welcoming community. And it matters how we welcome people, and it matters that we understand what it means when we welcome people. Because what it means is change. When we welcome people to this community and to this religion as their home, we are implicitly saying yes to change. Because here's the thing, if you can't rearrange the furniture, you're not at home. You're a guest. You're just passing through. But if you're home, you can move the sofa, you can move the chairs around, you can put your own artwork on the walls, you can crank up the stereo and play your own music. You get to change the space and the atmosphere. You get to leave your mark. Now, anyone who's ever had a partner or partners, you know sometimes this involves a conversation. Sometimes it's a long conversation, sometimes it's a loud conversation. But if you're not even a part of the conversation, or if I'm going to insist on always having my way, then I don't really think of this as our house, and you're not really at home. Now, for Unitarian Universalism as a whole, which is fairly homogeneous across race, class, culture, ethnicity, and so on, living into the eighth principle will necessarily mean being open to change. Because as the backgrounds and life experiences and life concerns and points of view represented in our church community become more diverse, then accommodating those needs and wants and desires and points of view will mean change. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but it's important to name it, because change, even good change, can challenge or stress a community. So it's important to be clear, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about being open to change, which means some things will happen that you love and some things will happen that you might not like. We will have to learn to become more adept at navigating change as we live into the fullness of our religious tradition. We will have to learn to resist the deadliest of phrases. That's just not how we do things around here. That's just not how we do things around here. That phrase, more than almost any other, communicates loud and clear, you may be in the same space as me, but you don't really belong. You are a guest. Now, part of what we'll need to do to become more adept at navigating change, and I think this will be very good for us, is we'll need to become much clearer about what Unitarian Universalism is and what it is not. We will need to be very clear on what our core religious values are and what we aim to do in the world. My sense is, and this is just my sense, but that as a religion that is not defined by a central dogma or creed, and isn't anchored by a shared scripture like the Bible or the Quran, it's relatively easy for us to confuse our group culture with our religious identity. It's relatively easy for us to confuse our group culture with our religious identity. We can confuse the particular forms that we use to express Unitarian Universalism with Unitarian Universalism itself. Now, without rehearsing a bunch of old stereotypes, which would be tired and untrue of this community, even this community, I will just say that it is true that there currently happen to be a lot of white middle-class liberals within UU. But the cultural markers and the cultural preferences of white middle-class liberalism are not Unitarian Universalism. They have nothing to do with what Unitarian Universalism is as a religion, So the eighth principle challenges us to be radically welcoming in making a lot more space for other cultural markers and other cultural preferences, while understanding that as UUs, we are all grounded in something that is deep and enduring, that is much bigger than that. Values like love and justice and interconnectedness and freedom. The last thing I'll say about welcoming today is that sometimes with the best of intentions, we can be unwelcoming without meaning to or even realizing that it's happening. There is a bit of an art to creating a welcoming space. I want to hold up here the exceptional work of our welcoming committee. They are very, very intentional at creating a welcoming space, at inviting people in, at connecting people to the community. They're very good at it. And I want to hold up all of you, because you are very welcoming, engaging people. And we hear that a lot. We hear a lot how very warm and very friendly and welcoming the community is here. So I want to hold that up. But when you talk specifically about welcoming across difference, that can be a little bit trickier. And when you're trying to intentionally create a multicultural space, a multicultural community, that can be tricky, and we can get tripped up sometimes, right? We all have embedded cultural assumptions. That's totally natural. And sometimes, without us meaning to, those assumptions can communicate who we are expecting to come walking through the door in a way that does not feel welcoming to the person who actually walks through the door. And I'll give you an example drawn from true life. A young woman is visiting with young children, and she is innocently asked, "Is your husband joining us today?" Only she's a lesbian. She could also be unmarried. She could be in a polyamorous relationship. There's a lot of possibilities there. Or to a person who is judged to have Asian features, it is asked, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Cleveland." No, where are you really from? Right? Where are you really from? And that question, which no white person has ever asked, again, intended so innocently, but imagine getting asked that over and over again in the course of your day. Where are you really from? Where are you really from? No, where are you really from? What is being communicated about who does and doesn't belong in this space? I could draw on many more examples, touching on assumptions about race and class and age and disability. Where did you go to college? And I'm not going to belabor the point. Being welcoming across difference is something that we want to be good at, but it is not something that we are necessarily naturally good at. To help us get better at this, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education is going to be offering workshops on radical welcoming at multiple times throughout the year, and I hope that each of you will participate in one of them. Because being more adept at creating a welcoming environment is not just a nice thing to do. It's not just something that we want to do. It is a religious value. And at the right moment, at the right time, it is a life-saving, life-changing religious value. It is one of the ways that we live out our principles. Remember, welcoming someone can be a healing act. It can be the beginning of a healing journey. And we have something important and life-giving to welcome people into. Max Warren said, "Our first task in approaching another people, another culture, another religion is to take off our shoes, for the place we are approaching is holy, is holy." May we aspire to be radically welcoming in a way that recognizes the holiness of each individual. And may we work to create more room within our great tradition of Unitarian Universalism and within UUI, so that even more and different people can find their way home. Blessed be, and amen.